Located in the center of the Key Largo National Marine Sanctuary, Key Largo Dry Rocks forms an oval patch, 400 by 200 meters, somewhat inshore of the main reef line. The seaward side of the reef is delineated by sand channels and coral ridges, forming a spur and groove system of coral growth. 12 mooring buoys dotting its perimeter protect the reef and provide secure anchors for boats and visitors exploring its beauties. Older than a century, one of the remarkable features of this reef is this large Colpophyllia natans colony. Its unmarred beauty here shows clearly why it is one of the several species referred to as brain corals. Close by is a well-known landmark at this reef, the statue of Christ of the Deep. The vision of the Christ statue underwater is an awesome revelation. Face uplifted, arms outstretched and silhouetted against the brilliant blue water, the 9-foot bronze figure of Christ symbolizes peace and goodwill, welcoming all who would venture into the sea. Created by sculptor Guido Gagliete, the 4,000-pound statue was given to the Underwater Society of America by Egidi Cressy, an Italian industrialist. The beautiful waters of the Florida Keys were considered a perfect site where the statue could be displayed without commerciality. It was accepted by the Florida State Park Board, and in 1965 it was mounted 4 fathoms down on a 7.5-foot concrete base in a coral amphitheater on the seaward side of Key Largo Dry Rocks. The reef, though, has grown from living forms, like the coral animals or polyps, which produce the ridges and grooves of this Colpophyllia natans colony, or the prolific fish life which highlights the vital quality of this reef. Here, scores of Bermuda chub, yellowtail, and sergeant majors swarm seeking food in the plankton-rich waters. This reefscape is typical of the seaward side of the reef. On either side of sand or rubble-strewn channels, ridges are covered by a variety of soft and stony corals. There is no particularly predominant species, but large starlet coral heads, Montastraea annularis colonies, have joined with the hydrozoan Millepora, or fire coral, in building the reef front. Among them, soft corals, sea fans, and Gorgonians grow up to form sea gardens, but gardens of living animal colonies rather than plants. We are fortunate to encounter a relative rarity, a colony of Atlantic stony coral, Dendrogyra cylindrus, or pillar coral. This is one of the species sought after by collectors in the days before corals were protected in the United States. This scleractinian species is unique, also because of its soft polyps, which are extended both day and night. The polyps of most corals are withdrawn during the day and only come out to feed after the sun goes down. Carried by the surging waves, zooplankton is the major food for these immobile but active cylindrids. Protected from spear fishermen within the Key Largo National Marine Sanctuary, large predatory fish like this friendly black grouper and curious Barracuda are commonly seen at Key Largo Dry Rocks. They will often join a group of divers and accompany them on their dive. Still flanked by the ever-present yellowtail and Bermuda chub, we approach the shallower area of the reef, where the predominant species is Acropora palmata, the branching elkhorn coral. Porous corals, like these Porites, astreoides, mustard hill corals, and many swaying Gorgonians, are found here in the shallow reef areas. Like snow covering the bottom, an extensive mat of Palythoa, an encrusting soft coral form, has overgrown this ridge. Encountering a hawksbill sea turtle is a pleasant surprise. Realizing our presence, he scoots away, but settles down when he sees we mean him no harm. Identified by its hawk-like bill and the jagged scoots on the back edge of its tail, the hawksbill is characteristically a smaller variety, more common on the shallow reef than the green or loggerhead turtles. Prized as the source of tortoiseshell and tasty meat, turtles were once hunted in these waters. Now they're protected, and divers commonly are treated to a view of this friendly sea creature. A mustard color is characteristic of the mustard hill coral, Porites astreoides. Flattened and knobby, this colony grows among the blade-like forms of Millepora, the stinging fire coral. Again, we see that a soft, lumpy carpet of Palythoa has encroached upon the coral colonies that once grew here. The aggressive distribution of Palythoa needs further study, and perhaps eventually some kind of monitoring or control will be necessary. Although snorkelers and divers should avoid it, the sting of the fire coral is not particularly serious for most people. The toxin can be neutralized by an enzyme found in meat tenderizer or by ammonia. This mound of greenery is a dense growth of the algae Halimeda. Though living here, after it has died, the calcareous remnants of this plant are frequently accumulated behind the reef, and the flaky particles add to the bottom sediments. Here is a fine example of the bushy Venus sea fan, Gorgonia flabellum. Unlike the large, flat, common sea fan, this shorter species has many small branches oriented at right angles to the main fan. As we get closer to the shallowest part of the reef, we enter the Acropora palmata zone, where the elkhorn coral proliferates. Here, the vigorous growth of this fast-growing coral forms the reef crest. The shape of the colonies depends on the availability of lateral space to grow, because vertically, growth is limited by the low tide level. The flat palmate branches spread out and create complex microhabitats for many species of small tropical reef fish. Lobsters seek, and find, refuge deep within this coral maze. There's a dramatic transformation as we get closer to the crest. Some of the coral is dead or dying. In terms of temperature and exposure, this is the zone of highest stress for these corals. Here, at extreme low tides, they may be exposed long enough to die. This is the reef flat itself. At this point, the reef has reached the extent of its upward growth. Occasionally, a colony of Porites or finger coral grows up in the shallows. Like a few other coral species, the living polyps of this coral animal usually extend to feed during the day. Sometimes palmata colonies are partially buried by sand, which is accumulated around the base of the coral. This sand is formed by the dynamic destruction of the coral skeletons, which results in the construction of bottom sediments. Parrotfish excretions, Halimeda, and broken skeletons of other reef animals also make up the loose aggregate. With plenty of room to spread out, these Acropora palmata formations have grown laterally. Many fish enjoy the shelter of the overhanging branches. A Montastraea annularis colony, or starlet coral, grows here in the shallow channel crossing the central area of the reef. Damselfish live within well-defined territories and often choose to establish their dens in the arms of an elkhorn colony. This damselfish will begin to pick at specific points on the coral and remove the tissue. Later, filamentous algal turf lawns develop in these patchy areas, which are utilized by fish as food. In this way, the damselfish are farming. Responding to this disturbance, the coral grows up and forms vertical protuberances or chimneys, an altered growth form, somewhat like a tumor, but with an external cause. Following sand channels is the easiest way to cross the reef. The large size of the rubble and dead coral boulders in this channel is evidence of the dynamic force of the water, which may surge through this area during extreme stormy weather. This is a good example of the two forms of fire coral growing together, complanata, the blade form, and alcicornis, seen here encrusting a soft coral branch. Sometimes our attention underwater is concentrated, and we may miss the shadowy presence of a shark, or get only a fleeting glimpse. At other times, their presence is riveting. On rare occasions, divers might have the opportunity to observe this ancient and powerful fish at close range. For millions of years, sharks have kept their primitive features and instincts, evolving little, yet they still control a large area of water space. In this situation, the bull sharks are attracted by a small fish, probably wounded earlier by one of them, which has taken cover at the base of a coral colony where it cannot be reached. To date, within the Key Largo National Marine Sanctuary, where spearfishing is not allowed, there has been no occurrence of an unprovoked attack by sharks. Tossed and tumbled by the turbulent force of storms, these palmata colonies have recently been violated by a more powerful factor, the crushing impact of boat groundings caused by careless humans. These fresh white breaks are the sad reminders of the fragility of the coral reef. Recently, the Monroe County Boating Improvement Fund provided support for markers placed on the shallow reef areas to aid navigation and deter catastrophes such as this. Still, it will take decades to reestablish normal reef growth here, and it may never happen. The measuring tape follows the path of significant damage from a 32-foot trimaran sailboat that struck here in 1974, over 13 years ago. This portion of the grounding track, originally colonized by Acropora palmata, elkhorn coral, was filled in by Acropora cervicornis, branching staghorn coral, which then subsequently died of an unknown cause. Here, a U-shaped valley of destroyed Acropora palmata has colonies in various stages of recovery. Some have regrown, others never will. The remnants of this shipwreck littered the reef. Most of the debris was salvaged or removed, but this battery remains, both a reminder and a reference point for future studies of the damage and recovery. The original coral rubble caused by the wreck has not recovered. However, this is a section where Acropora palmata has regrown and filled in the grounding track. Just beyond this portion is an overturned colony of Acropora palmata that has reoriented its growth upward to continue living. Behind the reef, on the backside of Key Largo dry rocks, we see few manifestations of active coral disease, but there is evidence of turbulence and wave action in the remains of coral rubble. The finger form of Porites commonly grows here. A gray angel stands guard, while damselfish defend against our invasion. This extensive devastation of Acropora cervicornis is the result of an unknown phenomenon, possibly some drastic ecological condition like high temperatures or disease that destroyed these corals. An exceptionally dense community of Porites or finger coral has grown up in this back reef zone. Intermittent Porites colonies are interspersed with the broken cervicornis branches. This mega colony of Porites has spread over a wide area. The closely packed fingers give a soft cottony look to the hard coral colony. It is difficult to estimate how many colonies take part in building a huge formation like this. The living extended polyps flutter with the action of the waves. Transported broken branches of finger Porites may start new colonies. This asexual mode of reproduction is still underestimated in corals, but nevertheless it is important to understand the life history of clonal organisms and their role in the reef building process in the present and in the geological past. Beyond the Porites zone is a collection of massive Montastraea annularis, or starlet coral colonies. These round or knobby colonies have a diameter greater than 1 or more meters. In this spot, they are accompanied by a rounded Colpophyllia natans. Reminiscent of a giant Stonehenge, these monoliths are formed by slow-growing corals. They may have been here when the first Europeans arrived at Key Largo dry rocks. Behind the bulwarks of these great coral stands, protected areas provide optimum conditions for Acropora palmata, possibly transported here during a storm, and even for Acropora cervicornis, staghorn coral. This fleshy-lobed anemone contributes to the surreal effect of the coral reef. It is a cylindrate related to both corals and jellyfish. Living unseen within its tentacles may be small commensal cleaner shrimp. Successful in this niche, the animal has grown. Largo dry rocks is like an island in a sea of grass. Beyond the living stony corals, beds of thalassia, or turtle grass, extend across the sea floor. An important ecological factor, these grass beds act as a filter to trap sediments. They are a nursery ground for juvenile fish, and they provide a grazing and foraging area for fish that move off the reef to feed. Anything protruding from the level surface of the grass, whether it is a soft coral plume, a sponge, or an inanimate object such as this, quickly becomes an attractant for fish life and a habitat for invertebrates and other living growth. This strange feature, isolated on the grassy plain, is difficult to identify. It is not until we get the proper perspective that we can see it for what it is, the giant fluke of a bygone ship's anchor embedded in the bottom. This anchor characterizes man's presence in these waters for perhaps 2, maybe even 3 or more centuries. It is a reminder that man is a visitor on these reefs, and that what remains after he passes will be incorporated into the structure of the reef. We should be careful not to destroy our legacy, but come into harmony with the sea, as has this ancient relic.